Swagatam. In previous video, we had discussed about town planning and architecture. We had discussed what is town planning and how Kautilya had planned a beautiful structure for a fortified town of his time. Similarly, we had discussed about architecture and we have also understood what architecture means and what are the various examples of architecture in India which existed for last several centuries. In this video, we are going to discuss about Vāstu-śāstra, which is the most interesting topic for anybody in India while building the house or any construction site or any place where they want to live or survive for long. So what is Vastu? When this word Vastu is discussed, in Sanskrit, the word Vastu means Vasanti Praninaha Yatra, where the living beings dwell. That is called Vastu. So, when we try to understand about Vastu more, it is also known as Vastu Vidya or Shilpa-śāstra. Implies the science related to artistic creation through design, fabrication and construction. The modern day equivalent term for Vastu Vidya is architecture. In the Vāstu-śāstra, 4 things are considered as Vastu, which we need to understand. One is the earth or the ground, which is called Bhumi. Second is temple or a palace, which is also called Prasada. Then we have convenience, Yana and couch, Shayana. So these are the 4 aspects or 4 things which are considered as Vastu. But majorly we see Bhumi is connected with Vastu. Essentially, a Vastu is an art of correct setting whereby one can align the proposed structure to the Pancha Mahabhutas. In present day, we see Vastu is taken in a very wrong sense. Vastu is taken like keeping the vase in one place is not a good Vastu, keeping the vase at another place, the bucket should be kept at this place, the mug should be kept at that place. So these aspects were never discussed in Vāstu-śāstra. Vāstu-śāstra, as I said, is essentially an art of correct setting whereby one can align the proposed structure to Pancha Mahabhutas. To make it more lighter mode, we see that there are houses in which the doors are built towards east. We see their door is towards the east and the broker comes and shows, see, this house is very good for you because it's east faced house, their door is towards the east. But what mostly is experienced, the most of the doors which are faced to east, the sunrise cannot be seen in that building. So that's not what Vastu means. Vastu actually means where Pancha Mahabhutas, we say 5 elements, the Prithvi, Yap, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha, the earth, the water, fire, etc. So these are Panchabhutas. So these Panchabhutas should influence the house. That is what the Vastu discusses. The basic premise is to immigrate the design and construction of the towns, temples and other buildings with the natural forces and optimize the process of creating the proposed structure so that intended use is achieved. That is what the basic premise of Vāstu-śāstra is. So then what are the topics which are discussed in Vāstu-śāstra? What are the issues discussed? If you ask this question, the answer is town planning. In town planning, we discuss about site selection, design of towns, villages, capital city, land use patterns like zoning and all. Then we have civil architecture, where we discuss about palace, houses, forts, public buildings, theatre, library, other public infrastructures, etc. Then we have temple architecture, which discusses about temples, components of temple, iconography. Iconography means idol making. Then we have artistic, which discusses about paintings, furnitures, doors, sculptures, etc. Then there are some other aspects which are discussed in Vāstu-śāstra. Those are qualification of a sthapati. Sthapati means architecture, choice of building material, wood, etc. Then site planning, which we called as Vastu Purusha Mandala. So these are the aspects which are discussed in Vāstu-śāstra. So where Vāstu-śāstra, I am again and again saying that these topics are discussed in Vāstu-śāstra. From where this Vāstu-śāstra is coming? This Vāstu-śāstra is coming from Vāstu-śāstra texts which are written by the great scholars. So some texts I would like to mention here. There is a text called Kashyapa Shilpa, which discusses about a treatise on architecture and iconography, which also discuss about prescriptions of the building of the temples, rules of making images of the deities, etc. Then we have a Narada Shilpa-śāstra, which speaks about general roads, water resources, village and town planning. There are 14 types of towns mentioned in Narada Shilpa-śāstra. That is the unique thing about this text. Fortification, palace complex, interior planning, etc. are the important aspects which are discussed in this text. Then we have a text called Vishwakarma Prakasha. We have a text called Manasara. We have a text called Mayamatam, which is considered to be one of the oldest available text of Vāstu-śāstra, written by Maya. Maya was believed to be the architect of Daityas. These are some different texts which we see in Vāstu-śāstra. As I was mentioning in others, what are the other topics discussed in Vāstu-śāstra, I was mentioning that there is one concept called Vastu Purusha Mandala. So this is how this mandala looks like. It's a very square thing where you can see many boxes, and in the center you can see a person called Brahma. He is actually a deity, Brahma. In Vāstu-śāstra, what we do, we consider this land to be Vastu Purusha. So Vastu Purusha, we see not Vastu Purusha as a land which is non-living, but we consider it as a living entity. Indian approach to architecture views to the site on which the proposed structure is to come as Vastu Purusha. That's what Vastu Purusha I said, as I mentioned. The site is not viewed here as a earth or bhumi. It is actually viewed as a transformed entity with life. Vastu is primarily the planned site of a building or a settlement such as town, and is referred to as Vastu Purusha Mandala. Mandala means polygon. But as a rule, the shape of Vastu Purusha Mandala is square. It is the plan of all architectural forms. Wherever we see, the plan of all architectural form will be Vastu Purusha Mandala, which will be in square form. The center of this mandala is called as Brahmasthala. As I had shown a picture, in that picture the center part I told that there is a deity called Brahma. So this area is called Brahmasthala. So this actually aligns the designer to align the structure to these forces, these Panchabhutas, natural forces which we were discussing. This Brahmasthala actually helps the designer to align the structure to these forces. Based on the type of the planning adopted, these aspects are used to place various facilities. In temple construction, the Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorum which we call, is placed in the Brahmasthala. Similarly, in the design of fortified capital city, the king's palace is placed in the Brahmasthala. We have seen the picture which about the fortified city planned by Kautilya. In that we can see the king's place is placed at the Brahmasthala. And the division of the site into various sizes and squares, how it was done, that's another question which comes into our mind. So any site on which a proposed structure needs to be built is conceived in terms of squares. There were several squares in that mandala. Each square of Vastu Purusha Mandala is attributed to a protecting deity by whose name the square is designed. The simple structure is a 1 by 1 square, and at the extreme the site could be divided into 1024 squares, that is 32 into 32, 32 by 32. So while planning the town, village, or having a village planning, or building houses, now we need to think how many squares we need to have for that thing as a part of Vastu Mandala. So usually what happens, town and village planning may involve larger number of squares, while individual buildings fewer squares. And most oftenly we have seen that there are 64 squares or 81 squares are employed. So what these different types of square called, that is also given in the Vastu texts. So there are different names for 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3 type of plannings or mandalas. So like we have Sakala, that means 1 into 1. Sakala also means 1 in Sanskrita. Sakalam, Shakalam, Mabhut, this type of verses we can see. Then we have Pechaka, we have Pittha, that is 2 by 2 or 3 by 3. Then we have Mahapitha. So there are some 10 such division of the sites are given in the Vastu texts. So in this whole video, we have seen what is Vāstu-śāstra and what does Vastu Purusha means, what does Vastu Purusha Mandala means, what are the different types of squares involved in this Vastu Purusha Mandala. So these aspects we have understood. Now in next video, we will understand different issues related to Vāstu-śāstra. Till then, Namaste.